value your time. And then I'm going to put the view on me so that, let me just pin myself. Can you guys see me? Okay, good. So for those of you who are watching the recording, hello, welcome. Thank you for taking the time out of your schedules to spend some time with me and with us. Hi, Sharon.
Good morning, everyone.
Hello. Before I begin, I wanted to acknowledge the lineage that I am going to be teaching from today. And it's not only just one lineage. I've been studying the things that I've been studying for many, many years. And I've got so many beautiful teachers that have and continue to have in the past and continue to teach me all the things that I'm learning. And so to name them would be ridiculous because that would in itself take an hour. But I wanted to just acknowledge them because they have changed my life. These practices and themselves, these women in particular, and some men too, have changed my life and the way that I live. So I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge them and the teachings that I'm about to speak with you about. And maybe you want to just take a moment and think about every single person that has supported you to where you are today. Every single person, living thing, whether that be an animal or a plant or a piece of land or an ancestor maybe that you haven't even met yet, someone who is a part of your life as you know it, and just to pay homage to having had an experience with it or her or them. All right. So thank you so much for being here. As I mentioned in a lot of the copy that I wrote for today's class, I have myself struggled with burnout. And there are a few things that have happened along the way. I haven't only struggled with burnout once. I've struggled with it many, many, many times. And especially the last time that I struggled with it, I started to notice a pattern to the burning out. And that was before I started supporting people to better their health through these practices and the ways that I teach. But what I started to notice was there's like a certain pattern that you will find yourself in when you're super stressed and burning out. And my intention today was to share with you what this pattern looks like so that you can perhaps see yourself in this pattern. And at the end, once I've finished explaining the pattern, give you a little bit of a solution, perhaps, or a few solutions that you could take from this workshop and implement immediately. So the way that this will work is that we'll talk a little bit about stress and what it looks like and how it manifests. Then we'll look at the 4 parts of the pattern, the mistakes that you'll be making, and they actually move from one mistake to the next. They kind of compound one another. And then we'll look at all the ways that we can support ourselves through stages of burnout. If at any time, look, we're a small group here today, so if at any time you've got questions and you just want to take yourself off mute and ask, please do. The chat is always available for you. I want this to be an interactive experience where you walk away from today feeling like you have really gained something from it. Even if it's not a physical practice, it's just something has shifted in your cells. Because quite often when we're in a state of burnout, we don't even know that we're there, or you know that you're in burnout and you have no idea how to get out of it because you're a hamster on a wheel. So let's keep this conversation flowing. And if there's anything that comes up for you that as I'm talking, that you've got a question about, please bring it to me, because your question is most likely going to support someone else as well. For those of you watching the recording, if you've got any questions that come up from here, feel free to reply to my email, or of course, you can always contact me on Instagram at Ariana Pina, and I'll be so happy to help you. So with all of that being said, let's talk about stress. Let's talk about stress and how the body reacts to stress. So you've probably heard before that not all stress is bad, and that is true. The body needs a certain amount of stress. If you even just look at the physiological aspect of stress on, say, bones, for example, we need to put a certain amount of stress on our joints and our bones and our muscles in order for them to maintain their integrity, their strength. And the same goes for stress within the body, stress hormones in the body. There's nothing wrong with it. If you are driving your car and someone swerves into you, the response that you have from that, right? It spikes some cortisol, it spikes adrenaline, but in that moment, you are super aware of what's going on around you and you're able to make adjustments accordingly, right? So I don't want you to be on the road when someone's swerving into you, but you need this kind of stress in order to keep yourself safe. It's a good thing, right? The problem is that we take on stresses in our world nowadays that are unnecessary. So an example of this would be, we get an email from someone, and we read the email, we read the tone of the email, and to us, we are triggered into a stress response. Now, there's a lot that I can say about this, right? Because quite often we see the world as we are, not how it is. So if we're moving through a place in our lives where we have unresolved issues, traumas, sensitivities that are a little bit heightened, then everything that we witness in the world will be perceived through the lens of that heightened sensitivity, which means that when we read that email, we read it as we are, not as it was intended. Yeah. And we can apply that same rule to so many different things. The tone in someone's voice, the way someone leaves their socks on the floor, the way someone didn't call you for your birthday, like so many things in our lives happen and we see them through the experience that we are experiencing internally. We push that experience and project it outwards. And that's how we see the world. And every bit of unresolved emotional, not all trauma, but just emotional sensitivity that will be experienced within us is generally experienced as a trigger or a reactive response in the world. And so while some triggers and reactions are helpful, a lot of them are not. And the problem is that those that are not helpful, if we experience them not only every day, but multiple times a day, we unintentionally spike our stress hormones to the point where our body burns out. This is burnout. This is a constant state of overwhelm, a constant state of needing to jump up on your feet, react, respond quickly. One of the things that I used to experience a lot, the thing that created my burnout time and time again, was this feeling of me being left behind and not doing enough. So I would have this experience in my own body, like time's running out. These were the stories I kept on telling myself. Time's running out. I'm getting older. I haven't done the things that I want to do. Everyone's better than me. Everyone's doing better than me. Everyone's got their stuff together. They've got the husband, the 2.5 kids, the house in the country, like all of these things. You're watching the world around you and you think that you should be something other than you are. And so that was my experience anyway. And so what happened was every time I saw something that reflected back to me where I was at, I would get triggered into a reaction. And so I was on all the time. I would wake up thinking about work. I would go to bed thinking about work. I would think about all the things that I haven't done, that I'm yet to do. My task list just grew and grew and grew and grew. I never got anything done because I was overwhelmed. I was looking at 20 million ideas at once and trying to make them all happen, because I thought if I didn't get it all done, I was going to lose. I was going to fail. And that's what created my burnout. And you can apply that same level of intention to anything in your life. Some people experience burnout because they're experiencing rough situations in family dynamics or relationships where nothing they do is right. They're just constantly trying to get it right and nothing is right. And they tend to burn out emotionally because they just don't know what else they can do. Some people will find burnout at work because their bosses, or if you work for yourself, the demands are so high that no matter what you do, you just never get on top of the things that you need to do. And so you're constantly trying to figure out what the next best thing is, and that's how you burn out. So burnout can be applied to so many different things. So now that we've understood this stress, the amount of stress that we experience and how that correlates to burnout, please feel free to let me know, like, how do you experience burnout in your life? What does that look like for you? And feel free to type it into the chat so that we can just have a little bit of a conversation about that, because I can then tailor the rest of the workshop to those who are here live. So what happens is, actually, let me take a sip of water while you guys write that in the chat. Let's do that. Burnout. I mean, obviously you experience it because you're here. You want to experience ways in which you can actually recover from burnout, or at least understand what it is and what you're doing. What mistakes are you making that leads you to burnout? And I've basically given you it all in my little example, right? In my little story that I shared with you about how I experienced burnout. All the 4 parts, all the patterns of my burning out is what we'll talk about. You'll see it in the story. And we can then talk about it from there. Sharon says, same here. I get into a continual pattern of being on the hamster wheel. Yes. Yeah. I know that feeling. It's exhausting. It's exhausting. And all you're doing is looking around you all the time to see what's the next best thing and what's the next thing that's going to get you to where you want to go, when a lot of the things are unnecessary, because you're going to get there anyway if you just focus on what it is that feels good for you. Courtney says, for me, it's a combination of not being good enough and trying to fix everyone else and help everyone else. Yeah, which is inevitably impossible, isn't it? Because we can't do that for anyone. We just need to focus on us and what we're doing. Yeah, I get that. I know, Stella, that you're in transit, so totally fine if you're not able to write anything down. If you want to come off mute and speak, feel free. Okay. All right. So what happens? What do you think is the next thing? Like, I am getting up early, I'm going to bed late. All I do is I think about what's the next thing that's going to take me to where I want to go. I'm on the pattern of being on a hamster wheel. I'm, trying to fix everyone and in a constant state of needing to get it right. Stella says, it's extreme overwhelm for me with so much to do and not enough time to do it until I literally cannot see or think straight. Yes, my love, I feel you on that. Like, so much going on that you've got no idea where to start. So what happens with the body? Like, what happens in the physical body when we do not stop and take a step back? Because quite often burnout only happens when we're in the state of stress again and again and again, time and time again, whether that be day on day on day or minute by minute by minute. What happens when you're not able to acknowledge this sense of burning out, not burnt out yet, but burning out, and you're not able to take a step back, close the laptop, take a weekend away, whatever it is that you need to do? What happens is that, and Stella alludes to it here, I literally cannot see or think straight, is that the body will start to shut down. Yeah, you'll get headaches, maybe migraines, body aches, pains, fatigue, that sense of like, I'm so tired, I can't even keep my eyes open. You may experience nausea, digestive issues, digestive discomfort. And again, if you experience it once, fine. You pick up the pattern, you're like, oh, things are not good here. I need to take a step back. But what happens is you get the migraine. I got the migraine, took 2 days out, maybe even took a couple of really hardcore painkillers to get myself out of it. And the moment I can open my eyes, I'm back at the laptop. We're on track for burning out here, right? And we all do this. We all do it because the mind is so strong. It's telling us, it's tricking us that we're lost, behind, that we are not enough, we're not doing enough, we're not going to make it. Like we're deluded into thinking that if we do not do, then we will lose. And that's a lie. To a certain extent, I understand that things need to be done. But a lot of the times, the things that we're doing are just busy work because we're in a state of overwhelm, because we don't know what to do next. And in my experience of not being burnt out now and having learned the skills that I'm about to teach you, being able to take a step back from everything that's causing me to feel the stress, to take a step out of the situation, meaning I'm not even looking at the situation and trying to strategize. I'm actually forgetting about the problem altogether. And you know how many people have great ideas in the shower? It's because their mind is not thinking about the problem. You're giving yourself some space, some wiggle room, and then all of a sudden you come up with the best idea ever or a new way to tackle the problem. There's a lot of air quotes going on here. So we get to the point where we have these body aches and these pains, and then we what? We go back to the laptop. We go back to the problem. And it happens all over again. Everything just happens all over again. You push yourself to the brink. You don't really know what you're doing. You are busy. You're so busy, but you're not really getting anything done. You're not seeing results. Whatever it is that you're choosing for, so whether it's more sales in your business, more time with your family, a sense of calm and composed demeanor, whatever it is that your goal is. Remember, it's not just about having, bank. It could be about maintaining a relationship or getting to the point where you have a better relationship with the loved ones in your life. Hey, Amy. Then what we want to do is we want to get to a point where we are doing what we need to do to achieve the goal and not just staying busy because we think it's what we need to do in order to achieve the goal. There's a very big distinction on that, because a lot of the times we may be doing a lot of the work thinking we're doing the work, but are we actually moving the needle? And we can, in business, we call it revenue generating activities, right? Where you're doing work that counts towards the bottom dollar or the profit. But you can apply revenue generating activities to anything in your life, even that's not really about revenue. If you're looking to achieve, better working relationships with the people in your business or the people that you work with, then what are the things that they are going to appreciate more than anything else? And then that's what you focus on. If your goal is to better your relationships, then you're going to be looking at their love language and helping yourself to communicate with them better in the way that they want to be communicated with. So whilst I'm talking about it from a business perspective, we can most certainly apply this to every single area in our lives, every area. Okay, so we get to this point, and Amy, we've just talked a little bit about the reasons why we're here for this workshop. Like, how do you experience burnout? And so the point here is we're going to be looking at the 4 steps that take us from where we are to burnt out. And if you can identify yourself in one of these 4 steps, then we'll be able to reverse engineer it a little bit and help you from the solutions that I'm going to suggest, the parts that you can actually start with first. Okay. So firstly, the first mistake, let's get into the mistakes, right? The first mistakes is that we ignore the symptoms. We ignore the symptoms. So for example, we may have, this feeling of being exhausted. That feeling of like, oh, I'm so tired. I just need to have that extra coffee. Because when I have that coffee, it's going to give me the energy to do what I need to do. That's the first symptom. Because here's the thing, is that when you're in a state of excitement, when you're inspired, you don't need the coffee to get the work done. You need the coffee and the caffeine to get the work done because you think that you need to get the work done, not because your heart's calling you to do the work. You may also experience poor appetite. I don't know about you, but when I'm stressed, I just have no appetite. I don't want to eat, not even interested. And now I know that the opposite end of that scale is emotional eating. You get so overwhelmed that you don't know what you're doing and you don't really know what to do. So you eat because you're trying to fill yourself up with something, because the overwhelm is quite emptying. It can feel quite empty. Another symptom is falling ill more often than usual. You fall ill again and again, and you find yourself in this situation where you're like, oh, I can't believe this is happening again. I'm sick again. That's a symptom. Emotionally, you could have this feeling of hopelessness. It's never going to work. What am I even doing this for? This is a lost case. Am I even cut out for this? You feeling me? What about the lack of motivation? I don't really want to do that thing anyway. And the other end of that is the procrastination, right? Because we land up with a lack of motivation, and then we don't land up doing anything because we're procrastinating because we're not motivated. And then from there, we have this sense of disconnection. We feel disconnected. We feel disconnected from ourselves. We feel disconnected from our business or the work that we're doing, from our family, from our friends, from our social lives. We just feel disconnected from everything, like whether that is a sense of wanting to lock yourself up in a room and not speak to anyone, or not connecting in a meaningful way. So numbing out, basically. So have a think about those symptoms and perhaps take a note, a mental note or a personal note of the symptoms that you experience the most in your life that lead you towards the state of burnout. Is it exhaustion, appetite, falling ill more than often, feeling hopeless, demotivated, disconnected? Because all of these are symptoms. They're not just you doing it wrong. Nothing's wrong with your body. Nothing's wrong with who you are and how you show up in the world. Nothing's wrong. It just is the way that you are manifesting the symptoms of what's going on within you. The state of burnout, this feeling of being on the hamster wheel, or not feeling good enough, or feeling overwhelmed. Your body's in a constant state of stress. And what it's doing through this, through the headaches, through the aches and pains, through the fatigue, the nausea, the stomach upsets, it's basically trying to say like, whoa, stop. I need a break. We need to recalibrate. Something's going on here. Your stress hormones are so high. I need you to just stop for a second so that I can just harmonize and rebalance. But when you don't do that, when you don't put the foot on the pedal, when you don't recognize the symptoms and you ignore them, they're going to get worse. They're going to knock a little bit louder. They're going to start screaming instead of whispering. So here's where it gets really interesting, because what happens is we're going to do one of two things. We're either going to improve the situation, or we're going to leave the situation. So we're either going to look at these symptoms and choose to better them, get rid of them, honor the body, or we're going to leave it. And we're going to wait for something external to us for change. We're going to wait for something to happen in the workplace that's going to instigate the change. We're going to wait for just the big career break, because that big career break is actually going to take me to where I need to go. You're waiting for your family to change. You're waiting for your home life to change. If you just sit this out for long enough and keep on going the way you're going, something's going to change and it will save me. Something's going to change. And I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to wait. But I'm not just going to wait. I'm not going to wait in stillness, because that's really uncomfortable. So I'm just going to keep on doing the things that I was doing all along to get me to this place of burning out. I'm just going to keep on doing the things, and something's bound to change. And this is where we make the biggest mistake, because the body's aching, the symptoms are getting worse, and we're a sitting duck. We're too overwhelmed to change anything. We don't know what to change. We don't feel like we'll have the right answers anyway. I don't know what decision to make because I'm overwhelmed. And goodness, I can't stop. If I stop right now, everything falls apart. So we just keep on going in the same pace because there's nothing else to do. And I feel like this is the second thing that we do on our way to burning out. And I feel like this is the part that is like, this is the step that once you've made a decision to change whatever it is that was, things start to happen a little bit differently. Like you land up not burning out. But if you don't change it at step 2, this is where problems can get worse. So if you do decide to change, let's say, you, like for me, for example, I'll share my story here. My 2 symptoms that I had the most of was this exhaustion and my lack of appetite. Didn't want to eat. My body was getting really, really weak. So what I did, after, definitely not the first time, because I burnt out many times before this, but the last time that really made the difference was I actually put in a napping schedule. Like a child, I fed myself every afternoon for lunch, and then I'd put myself to bed for a nap. Okay, this required for me to change my schedule. There were times when I was teaching yoga full time that I couldn't do that in the middle of the day. One of the reasons that I had a poor appetite was because I was teaching, mornings, afternoons, night times, and I couldn't find a moment to eat in between that schedule. So it was really difficult for me to actually find a time where I could eat and not have to rush to the studio. My point of sharing that story is that everyone here will have a different way that they support themselves through the changes. So we want to think a little bit outside of the box. Everything that you've learned about the right way or the good way, chuck it out the window and think about what would work for you best. What would work for you? For me, afternoon naps, wow, what a difference they make. And I still have them to this day. There are days that I don't have a nap when I don't feel like I need one, but mostly at about 2 or 3 o'clock every day, I go and lie down. Sometimes it's for 10 minutes. Sometimes it's for 2 hours. Yeah. And like I said, it doesn't happen every day. Sometimes I have full days and I'm not able to. And that's when you actually just push through and make it happen. But more often than not, the 80-20 rule is that I'm looking after my symptoms. I'm making sure I don't get exhausted. I eat every single meal. I don't skip meals anymore. And I had to make an effort to change that. I went and saw a naturopath, a nutritionist. She helped me get my stomach acids back in balance, helped me to digest my food again, because there's a lot of things that happen when you're ignoring the symptoms for a long period of time. It's not just like you just click a finger and all of a sudden you're back to normal. You have to lower your cortisol. You have to increase your digestive enzymes. Like the fact that I can now nap in the middle of the day. How many of you can nap in the middle of the day? I know, yeah, good. I know a lot of people who can't, who just cannot. And I can almost guarantee you that the reason is because your cortisol is high. Because you're not able to switch off. You're not able to close your eyes and just go, sleep, sleep. Right? So you have to start to regulate that a little bit. And a lot of the practices I'm going to teach you today will help you with that. So then that's step number 2, right? Stella says, I can nap. It's the only thing that works lately. Oh, I love that so much. I'm going to skip to one of the solutions that I have because I always say that sleep is my spiritual practice. Sleep is my spiritual practice. And I'm going to elaborate a little bit more on that later because we're brought up in a world that thinks that sleep is weak. It's wasting time. It's not productive, yada, yada. But there's a lot that happens in sleep that is integral to us changing, transforming, creating. I love that, Stella. So number 3, so you're waiting for everything to change. Let's say you've chosen just to sit and wait for life, for your environment to change. Let me have a sip here quickly. Number 3, you get into a stage of reaction. So reaction can look like anger. Yeah, this is the obvious reaction. Someone says something to you snappy, you lash out at them, you're irritated. Yeah, people are getting on your nerves. That's the first reaction. How many times have you been like, "Mah," and then you realize what you've just done, and you're like, "Oh, damn, so sorry. Sorry about that." So reactions, numbing out, drugs, alcohol, Netflix, social media, anything that takes your mind off temporarily feeling like you're out of control. Because if you're waiting for your external environment to change, then you're placing your control outside of yourself. So the whole point with drugs, alcohol, emotional eating, social media, all of that is to take control back. The mind is doing something that it can control. Adversely, it actually puts us more out of control. But to the mind, it's taking control because you can pour yourself a glass. You can change the channel. You can scroll. This is all things that you can control. But if you're waiting for your external environment to change, you're completely out of control. And the whole point of what we're doing here today is to take that control back inside of you. And it's a state, it's a feeling. Things in your external environment may not change immediately, but the only thing that you can change is you. You cannot change other people. And Courtney alluded to that in her note here. I'm trying to fix everyone and help everyone. And as we said at the beginning, like, that's impossible. You can suggest, you can support, you cannot fix people. People fix themselves. So avoiding things is another way that we react. We avoid the bank balance. We avoid the conversation. We avoid doing the thing that we need to do in order to move the needle. The thing that we said right at the beginning, the revenue generating activity. We, because of all these things, the avoidance, the alcohol, the drugs, we actually sleep less because all of those things are stimulants and it affects our sleep, which, as we know, will just send us down a downward spiral even further. And to some degree, we self-isolate. We don't tell people about our problems. We don't share them. And that in itself does harm because the internal self-talk that happens when we are self-isolating, whether it's physically or emotionally or both, the internal dialogue is such that you berate yourself. There's no loving kindness going on there. It's, why can't I get this done? What's wrong with me? And even worse, really, really bad words towards ourselves. And that breaks my heart because I remember having that. I mean, it's not like it's gone completely. You have to work on these things, right? These negative self-talk. It happens. But what we want to do is get to a point where instead of reacting, we're actually responding. We're not reacting, we're responding. So the fourth step, the fourth mistake we make is that we don't recognize that any of the things that we've been doing are incorrect or that they're mistakes. And then we repeat it again and again and again. So this is where we burn ourselves to the ground, get up, do it again. So we have the body ache, we ignore the symptom, we wait for everything to change, we scroll social media thinking it's going to get us somewhere better. We do it all again tomorrow. Yeah. And so we repeat old habits. This is who we are. We're human beings. We'll just repeat until we make a change. So our eating goes down the drain. Our sleep becomes really bad. We don't know how to manage our time because we're numbing out and avoiding everything. So we've got no idea how to get ourselves to do anything really because we don't have any motivation. We binge out on social media. So the comparisonitis is at an all-time high. We're looking at what everybody else is doing and freaking out about the fact that we're not there. Our emotional battery basically just empties out. We've got no capacity. And eventually what will happen is that we stay busy because we think it's what we need to do, but it's not productive. And we'll end up overextending ourselves. We overextend ourselves because we've got no idea how to maintain our boundaries. We don't know whether we're up or down, and we just say yes to everything. And then we'll end up disappointing not only ourselves, but everybody else because we're on this hamster wheel. And I think, Sharon, you mentioned this. This is the pattern. This is the hamster wheel. The hamster wheel isn't just one of these things. It's the 4-step process that actually leads to more and more burnout. Yeah. So with all of that being said, I'm sure that you can see yourself in one of those 4 steps, if not all of them. And what I really want to do is support you to picking one of the next 5 suggestions that I have for you, that just one of them, just one, and trialing it out for 2 weeks. Yeah. And just noticing whether anything shifts. I'm going to go ahead and say that what I'm going to suggest here is so simple. It is so simple that you're probably going to think to yourself, like, I cannot believe that that's it. But please don't mistake its simplicity for its ineffectiveness. Because as humans, we like to complicate things. And we like to think that the more complicated something is, the more effective it is. But it's actually the complete opposite. The simpler it is, the more effective it is. How many times have you started a new gym regime and you're like, I'm going to go 5 days a week, twice a day. We go morning and night. And I'm just going to do all the things. We overcomplicated. What if it was just like, I'm going to go 3 days a week whenever I felt? It's too simple, isn't it? 3 days. Of course, I've got more capacity. I can do 5 days. So my intention here is to keep it super simple and to encourage you to do one of these, just one. If you want to do 2, you can, but do it for 2 weeks and keep me updated. See if this changes anything for you. So the first thing is movement. If you are not moving, you got to get moving. Now, when I say movement, I don't mean hitting the gym and pumping iron and sweating until you can't stand up straight. Negatory. What I mean is using energy in your movement practice. This can look like yoga, qigong. It can look like energy medicine yoga, where you're actually tracing the meridians on your body as you're practicing. It can look like a yin yoga practice where you're focusing on specific meridian lines, opening up the energy channels. So the intention with the way that I like to teach movement is not just about increasing endorphins, which it is, and it will naturally do that. Moving the body has an incredible way of making you feel good. But the movement practices that I'm suggesting are all about moving energy in the body. They're about opening up the channels and the portals of energy within your body so that you can unclog, unkink, open up, and allow that energy to flow through you. Because quite often when we're stuck, when we have this feeling of like, I just can't get a solution, it's because we have some sort of energetic block within the body. So the intention with movement is just to open up the body. This can look like a 15-minute yoga practice. It can look like a 10-minute walk around the block. It can look like a 45-minute yin practice. Yeah, it could be whatever you want it to be. It could be opening up the joints, like just really rolling through the joints at your desk, moving the ankles, the knees. It doesn't have to be a Metro Golden Mayer production. It can just be as simple as moving the body. Okay. The second practice, my puppies. Does anyone have any practice? Does anyone have any questions about movement? This is a non-negotiable for me. The minute I start feeling like I'm in a ball of, I roll out my mat. And sometimes my practice looks like me hugging my knees into my chest, flicking them over to the left and doing a supine twist, flicking them over to the other side, doing a supine twist, and then doing a shavasana practice. Sometimes it's all I can do. But other times, it's a little bit more. And the one thing that I always say is like, if you get to your mat, that's the hardest part done. If you get to your bike, if you put your shoes on to go for a walk, the hardest part is done. It's just your mind playing tricks on you, thinking that you don't need to do it. Stella asks, why do we feel guilty when we don't train hard? It's like if I do Pilates or yoga, society thinks it's not proper training. This is my tennis match in my head with trying to move. Yeah, this is a really good question, Stella. I think we are taught to believe that movement has to bring about a sweat. And there are some ways of thinking that, the sweat is really where it's at. It depends on what it is that you're trying to achieve. So when I'm talking about movement, I'm talking to a group of people who are high achievers, right? Every single one of you that are here or watching this recording, you're a high achiever in some way, shape, or form, which is why you're in burnout. Whether it's only in, in ways that society wouldn't deem you to be an achiever at all, establishing strong relationships with people, let's say, or being the best in looking after your family or taking care of your home. Society doesn't really deem that as being successful, but you're burning out regardless because it's a state of mind. It's a stress response. So I'm talking to a group of burnt out individuals, high achievers. And here's the thing. When you're in a state of burnout, your body is already stressed. Okay. If I went and told you to do this high intensity training, you're going to stress your body out even more. You're going to spike your cortisol even more. And so quite often, you're not doing yourself any favors. what we want to do with burnt out individuals is lower cortisol. So it looks like a gentle yoga practice. That doesn't mean it's not a strong yoga practice or a strong or a long walk, but we're not putting you in a state of high stress response. We're not stressing the body per se. So society may think, that it's not proper, because what society's aim of losing weight or whatever it is that the aim is of the people who's saying it's not a proper training, your aim in this particular workshop is to regulate your stress. Your aim is to lower your cortisol. And so Pilates and yoga does that. Not all yoga. There's some yoga that you may do that puts a lot of stress and strain on the body. And so for this, I would say you're doing gentle yoga practice, a gentle yoga movement practice. So I would just say, don't worry about what other people say, because your intention here is very different to what most people would be moving for. Yeah. And here's the thing, right, is that it's actually more difficult to do a gentle practice than it is to do high intensity, because you're being asked to be still for an extended period of time without technology. And this in itself is challenging. It will challenge you. And of course, if we were having a conversation about weight loss, it would be a very different discussion. But like I said, we're talking here about burnout and how to calm your nervous system, which quite often is one and the same thing with weight loss anyway. But okay, good question. The second thing that I have, unless there's any other questions about movement. Any other questions? Did that answer your question, Stella? Yeah, okay. So boundaries is my second one. Dun, 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 dun. Boundaries. Okay, so we could literally do a class on boundaries alone, but I'm going to give you a very simple solution when it comes to boundaries. So simple. They're called flower remedies. Has everyone heard of flower remedies before? I use Bach flower remedies. You probably have heard of the Bach flower remedy called Rescue Remedy. It's its most popular remedy that has a bunch of different flower essences included in one remedy bottle that helps you out of fight or flight. But Bach created another 38 flower remedies, and there are specific flower remedies for different emotional states. And so without going into a flower remedies discussion, what I will give you is 2 flower remedies to help you with boundaries. So the intention with this is to first help you ground and then establish boundaries, because you can't establish boundaries if your energy is all up in your higher energy centers. You want to bring that energy down into your root and then establish a really strong energetic field around you, right? If you can create a strong energetic field, then you won't have to speak your boundaries. You won't have to tell people what your boundaries are, because they'll just know. Your energy will speak before you do. And so with this isn't really a communications conversation. This is really about forging a really strong energetic boundary from the inside. So the way that you take flower remedies, it's super simple. You would take 1 drop. I'll show you here. So this is my green tea. Yeah. I take 1 drop and put it in my tea. Oops. Every day. 1 drop every day. And I'm using 2. The one is called clematis, and the other one is called centauri. So I would put a drop of each in my tea or in my water bottle. Yeah. And so clematis is going to help ground your energy, and centauri is going to help you with boundaries. And that's how simple forging boundaries is using flower remedies. So Flower Remedies has an incredible way of helping us untangle any emotional knots that we have within our systems. It's an incredible way to support ourselves emotionally. It seems too good to be true, but it is so simple. So that's the second one. The third thing I'm going to suggest, are there any questions about Flower Remedies? Okay. The third thing I'm going to say is disconnect. Not disconnect from the people in your life, but more so disconnect from the worries. And so we do this via a technology detox. Yeah, putting your phone down for the weekend maybe, or deleting your Instagram app or your emails app or whatever it is that makes you feel overwhelmed. There are energy practices that you can ground yourself with, like creating grounding cords from your root energy into the core of the earth. Yeah, remember, where you focus your energy, that's just what happens. Whatever you think about energetically, that's what happens with your energy. So if you can create a grounding cord, you're halfway there. You just focus on that grounding cord for 3 minutes. You can put your feet in the earth. Right? This is the ultimate act of grounding. And you can start to follow the cycles in nature. Maybe you follow the moon cycle, the seasonal cycle. You eat according to your season. You practice according to the season. Maybe you practice according to the moon phases. We've become so disconnected from nature that that in itself is very ungrounding. So the moment you start to reconnect with your surroundings and nature in general, you start to ground yourself. You know, way back when we didn't wear shoes, right? Wherever we walked, we would have our feet on the earth. We didn't have to think about grounding. But nowadays, that's just what we have to do. We have to consider grounding as a practice. And then the practice, another practice that you can do to ground is to use either one of these two oils, frankincense or vetiver. Frankincense or vetiver. I have diluted both of these. That's why they're in these little bottles. It's at a 25% dilution. And there's a little spot on the sole of your foot called kidney 1, K1. You find it when you point your toe. It's in the ball of the foot. So you point your toe, and right where there's a little hole, like a little divot right in the center of the ball of the foot when you're pointing your toe, that's kidney 1. It's called bubbling spring. And this is the point that grounds your whole kidney channel. You know, our kidneys and our adrenals take the most stress when we're in fight or flight. So by activating the kidney channel, by using this point, you put one little drop of vetiver, right, like this, and you pop that on the sole of the foot, the ball of the foot, kidney 1, and you hold it for 3 minutes. So the practice that I teach is a light feathery touch. So if this is the ball of the foot, you're literally placing your finger very, very lightly. You're not pushing in. And this in itself is a practice, right? This in itself is a meditative practice, because you hold your finger on kidney 1 for 3 minutes. What you'll find naturally, depending on how tense you are, you'll start to push that in. And the moment you start to push it in, you realize that you're actually not thinking. So then you take your finger off and you start again. So this is a really beautiful way. Vetiver and frankincense are very, very grounding oils that help draw energy out of the energy body and bring it back into whatever point you're holding. And so with this, we're really trying to bring all the energy from the upper energy centers, and like a coffee plunger, all the way down. Such a simple practice. You can do that once a day for 3 minutes. You can choose to do it twice a day, on waking and on going to bed. So powerful, so powerful. Any questions about that practice? Okay. And then we have eating, nutritious food. Anything that doesn't come out of a packet, you start there. Anything that comes out of the ground. Yeah, plants, nutritious food. Keeping it super simple. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not going to pretend to be. But if I were to give anybody a hint on what's going to be more healthy, it's always going to be what comes out of the earth. Yeah. So you want to make sure that you're focusing on eating. Because here's the thing, like psychologically, what we feed ourselves determines how we feel about ourselves. So if we're restricting our food intake because we think that we need to, because we're not happy with the way we look, then psychosomatically, we're restricting ourselves from nutrition. Again, we could talk about that for hours. The way we live is always holographic, meaning what we do in one place, what we think in one area of our lives is what we experience in every area to the same extent, but a different degree. So if what happens in one happens in the whole, what happens in one aspect of my life happens holographically throughout the rest of my life. If I'm restricting myself from food, then I'm restricting myself in other areas of my life too. And while it may not be obvious at the onset what that is, what that restriction looks like, it is most certainly happening without fail. Without fail. The amount of times that I have client discussions where just through some questioning, some inquiry, we realize big, huge revelations that have come because of an off-the-cuff comment made about something that is so unrelated to what the revelation was about. It's always connected. Everything is connected. Nothing is separate. Not even you and I from a zoomed out perspective. Everything's connected. Any questions about food? The psychology of food? Okay. And then the final one, as I alluded to earlier, sleep. Sleep as a spiritual practice. Sleep as a spiritual practice. So there are a couple of things that we can do to help ourselves sleep better. Magnesium supplements, a really good quality magnesium. Magnesium oil spread all over our skin so that it's absorbed through the skin. Cutting out caffeine, alcohol, or at least limiting our intake. All of these things disrupt our sleep. We can do breath work to help us with sleep. But the important part here is to understand that sleep is an opportunity for our minds to switch, sometimes not off, but to switch to another channel, just to change the frequency. So you can go to sleep and wake up with an idea or a solution. You see, when you're sleeping, your mind rearranges things in a way that it cannot do when you are actively thinking. So you're parking your prefrontal cortex, the thinking, rational CEO brain, and you're allowing all the other hemispheres of the brain, or all the other parts of the brains, to come up with a solution to the issues that you're facing, the overwhelm you're experiencing. And in so doing, you're finding solutions that otherwise would not have been found. So whilst a lot of people may think that sleep is unproductive, I would go ahead and say that sleep is one of the most productive things that you can do. And I'm not the only person who thinks this. I was given a book when I was burning out in 2016. A colleague of mine at the time, she handed me a book and she said to me, listen, girl, like you're on a path right now and you're going to burn out pretty soon. Here's a book, read it. And it was Arianna Huffington's Thrive. Have you read that book before, Thrive? Which led me onto Arianna Huffington's book about sleep. She basically says that the answer to the world's problems is sleep. She said most people are making bad decisions because they're not rested. Most people are choosing things that are not good for them because they're fatigued. You know, there's a thing called decision fatigue. It's real. When you're tired, you cannot make decisions, or not good decisions anyway. So sleep as much as you can, as much as you need, and then make decisions when you're awake, having awoken from your sleep. So the cavalry is about to bark. Someone's at the door. So the way that I manage is that I have a list of things that I need to decide on or things that I need to focus on. And sometimes it's very difficult to make those decisions or focus when I'm tired. So I'll make sure that I do all of those things in the morning. Or if I am having a nap that day, I will do those things or make those decisions after having awoken from my nap, because I know that I'm going to be at my best version from a decision point of view after having had rested. So you just start to shuffle your life around a little bit so that you're looking after yourself. You are the priority. This is the most important thing I want to drum home here, is that you are the priority. So whenever you're feeling at your best, you're doing the things that are going to move the needle the most for you. So you're doing the vetiver on kidney 1 in the morning when you wake up, because you know that that is consistent for you. You feel good, you feel motivated. Maybe you're a night owl. Maybe you know that at 8 o'clock every night, you're actually more motivated than at 8 in the morning, which speaks volumes. Then you do your little practices at 8 p.m. at night. Remember what I said, like we don't take this is good for me and then apply that to our lives. We actually feel what feels good for you and then go ahead and do that. Don't worry about what other people say. Don't worry about what other people think that you need to be doing. Just do what's right for you. Figure that out and just do it. So out of all of these things, figure out which one of them you're going to be focusing on for the next 14 days and do it every single day and see how your life changes. Is it movement? Is it grounding? Is it flower essences? Is it essential oils? Is it eating correctly? Whatever that means for you. Or is it sleep? Is it sleeping as a spiritual practice? Pick one and commit to it for 14 days. Keep it super simple. Are there any questions about any of these practices? Nothing. My impulse is to want to do them all. Ahaha, overachiever. You see, this is the thing. This is why I said pick one, because I know I am you. I know you. We want to do it all. We want to go to gym 5 times a week, twice a day. You know, just pick one. It's so simple, so obvious. The practices, but so overlooked. Yes, because we want to complicate things. because we want to make things so complicated that we can't get to doing it. But the more simple it is, the more difficult it becomes. The more simple it is, the more difficult it becomes. It's not easy. Simple is not easy. Simple is hard. I was talking to my coach a while ago, and I said to her, the more advanced I get in my meditation practice, the more I want to go back to basics. And it's really annoying me because I've been meditating for years, and I feel like I should be like doing some advanced practices, getting lost in some sort of void, but all I want to do is focus on my breath. And she said to me, masters simplify everything. Mastery is simplification. If you want to simplify your life, you have to master whatever it is that's complicated. And that's repetition. So something that I haven't discussed that's really helped me is that when I start to think about all the things I want to do, like say you want to eventually get to doing all 5 of these things, because I do all 5 of these things in my life every day. But I didn't start doing all 5 of them. I did one thing every day for 14 days. And then when it wasn't even so much as a thought, I added another thing. And I did that for 14 days. And then I'd fall off the wagon and do it again for 14 days. And then I would add another thing. So the thing with us is that as high achievers, we want to do it all at once. I'm not saying you're never going to get to the point where you're doing them all. You're just staggering them. You're doing one at a time, step by step, slowly. Because when we want to do it all at once, chances are you're going to do it for 3 days. And on the 4th day, it's going to be too hard. So you're going to let the whole thing go. I've done this heaps of times. You just forget about the whole thing. How many things have I started only to have done them for a few days and then thrown out the window because it was too much time, too complicated, too hard? When I started eating properly, I would pick one thing, just change one thing. It was simple. It was have lunch. That was it. Doesn't matter what you eat for lunch, Ari. Just make sure you're eating lunch. That's it. Sounds simple, right? A lot of nutritionists would say, oh, but you must have a balanced meal. You have to eat this. You must then take your apple cider vinegar 20 minutes before and then rest. And, I do all of that now. But the reason that I was able to was because I stacked my habits. I started with lunch. That was it. You can eat whatever you want as long as you sit down for lunch every day. Okay, cool. I got that down packed. Now what? Okay, now we're going to start eating a nutritional lunch. You have to have greens on your plate. Okay, I can do that. Get that down packed. And each day you just add one little thing to it until one day you're having your apple cider vinegar 20 minutes before your meal. You're sitting down, you're having a nutritious meal. You're eating every day and you're doing that 3 times a day. So think about it holistically. Think about it zoomed out. There's nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. There's just this one little step. That's it. Take yourself off the hook for everything else. Pick one thing, do it consistently for 14 days, and then start again with the next thing. Pick another one of these things. Yeah? Any questions, any comments, any conclusions, any aha moments? I'd love to hear them. I'm going to be sending everybody some emails over the coming few days that will inform you of a program that I'm going to be running starting mid-April that includes all of these things. It's called the Embodiment of Abundance. It's a 12-week program. It's so new. I haven't talked about it at all with anyone. But what I have done is created a protocol to take anyone who's experiencing confusion, overwhelm, anything that we've talked about today, from 0, where you are now, to a place of feeling like you're in control and able to make big changes in your life. And I'm doing this through a week by week protocol. So looking at a movement practice, gentle, slow movement practice that will help the energy body, a breathwork practice that will do the same, oil applications and flower remedy applications, and doing that week on week for 12 weeks through like a journey from 0 to full recovery from burnout. And we're going to be starting it in mid-April, and it'll go for 12 weeks, just over 12 weeks, because there's 2 integration periods in the middle of those 12 weeks, so 14. And yeah, you can expect to see an email come into your inbox. And because you're here live, the 4 of you, I'll send you each individually a code. Actually, you can use this code, which I will set up later today. Let's just use April, whatever the password that you used for today's call, April 2023, to receive $444 off the program. So if it's something you want to do, use that code, book yourself in, and we'll be together for 12 weeks between April and the end of July. So good. I've got all of my oils and protocols. I've been practicing them for a few months now, and it's just so beautiful. Yeah. Stella says, I'm happy to feel validated that my approach and simplicity is in fact the right one. I'll be practicing sleep daily as my new habit. Thank you. You are so welcome. Yes, sleep, 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 sleep as much as you can. And yeah, sometimes all we need is that validation, someone to say like, yeah, that's okay, do that. And quite often we know exactly what it is that we need. Well, we just don't trust ourselves enough to go and do it. So yeah, permission slip granted. I'm going to hang out here in case anybody wants to chat with me or you've got any questions. I'm going to stop the recording so that those conversations are kept confidential. For all of those who are here live, thanks so much for being here. For those watching the recording, please reach out at any time, and I hope to see you and be with you soon. Bye for now.